YouTubers, this is a brute. This thing is so big, I actually have to move my camera back. The wide angle lens on my camera is not wide enough to show this monster. This is the Toshiba model SA7150 AM/FM receiver. This is a brute. This thing is a real brute. Now, I haven't even looked up the specs on this thing here, but just from the weight of the transformer on this thing, I'm going to guess that this thing can put out 120 to 150 watts easily per channel, maybe even more. This thing weighs an absolute ton. I can't wait to get the top off this thing and take a look at what's going on under the hood on this. Our symptom on this unit is one channel cuts in and out. Works perfect, and then one channel goes dead. So, without further ado, I'm going to get the top off this sucker, and we're going to get in here and see what's going on. These are the type of repairs that I actually still do. I'm still, besides showing you guys how to fix things and fixing my own stuff, I really do look more forward to the paid jobs, and this one is a paid job. So I got to get this thing apart. We're going to see what's going on inside this thing and hopefully get this unit back up and running tonight. Okay, got all the screws out now. We can lift the top off. Top comes off in two stages here. Actually got real wood. Look at this. Unlike this crap you see today, real veneer wood. You don't see that these days. And that's one of the things that makes these old receivers so valuable. I'm just going to get my camera up a little bit higher here so that you can see down into the top, and you'll be able to really appreciate the build quality. So, well, someone's been in here. Someone's been into this. It's been resoldered, this top. Huge transformer. Big filter capacitors. Here's our output stages here, right channel, left channel. It's got 4 great big output transistors per channel, and this actually looks very similar inside. It's not, but it looks very, very similar to a receiver that I have. I have a Sansui 9090 in my own personal collection. It's a receiver that I've been offered a lot of money for on several occasions to sell, and I've been very reluctant to sell it because I know that a Sansui 9090 on the used market these days goes for about $7 bills. So a unit like this is worth equally as much. This is a very old receiver from the 1970s, and I bet if this was put on the market for sale, it could probably fetch $500 or $600, if not more. It's just incredible what the value of these old vintage 2-channel receivers are. It's incredible that today in 2014 some of these units are going for as much or more than they sold for back in 1974 when it was made. It just shows that you know, what is old is new again. But we're going to hook up some speakers to this thing so that I can start checking it out to see where the problem is. More than likely, I haven't turned it on yet, but more than likely we're going to have a connector problem, or maybe a switching problem. One of the switches may be dirty. But let's hook some speakers up so that we can test this out and see exactly what it's doing. We've got this brute hooked up. We'll turn on the power and make sure our volume is at a minimum. And I'm just going to try something on the auxiliary inputs. I do have a mini disc player hooked up to it with some royalty-free music loaded. So if it's playing in the background, I don't have to worry about infringing on anybody's copyright. I believe these speakers I'm on here are probably blown, so it's not going to sound great, but I think we got some switches that are bad here. left channel sounds great. The right channel, not so much, but I do believe that I have a bad speaker here. The speakers were good at one time until an amplifier I was working on a while back I had a bit of a DC offset problem. I found out when my speaker started to sound a bit harsh that maybe there was a problem with this amplifier. Actually, it's the amplifier. Because now it's clear. We have a switch problem on this thing. The input selector switch is bad. You hear it when I move it? A little bit of leakage from the phono position too. Oh, I'd hate to cut this thing loose. Holy smoke. The meters go up to 500 watts. Now, we know this thing's not going to put out no 500 watts, but let's see what this thing really is capable of. What did I say I figured it was? 150 watts per channel? That's what it is. I just looked up the specs on this receiver. 150 watts per channel. That's 150 clean watts per channel. And any of you guys want to guess what these things are going for these days? I just looked one up and found one that just sold for $750 on eBay. I tell you, this old vintage gear is worth a small fortune. And even though I'm not in the electronics business anymore, I got out of the repair business about a dozen years ago, I still keep a hand in it for this stuff. This is the stuff that us service technicians of the past can actually still make some good money on, because you know that the client is willing to put a couple $100s into it. If you tear it all down and do whatever maintenance is required, clean all the controls, lubricate all the switches, clean all the switches, replace caps that are bad in it, and looks like this one's been replaced. Actually, thinking back on this thing, I think I repaired this thing about a dozen years ago at the shop that I worked at, and this work here is probably mine when I opened the shield cover up to change some of the components underneath it. That cap's been definitely replaced, and looking back on this thing, I do recall I have serviced these units in the past. So this was probably, I was probably the last guy to work on this thing a dozen or so years ago when I was in the business. Anyway, let's get back to, yeah. So we're going to start out by cleaning the controls. You can hear how noisy the switches are. Things about this unit is I have to look and make sure that I'm recording on the little tiny screen, because it doesn't show up on my large screen. One of the unique things about this unit is it has 3 sets of speaker outputs, but you can only have any 2 active at the same time. So you can have A and B or A and C active, but you cannot have A, B, and C. Everything goes off. You can have B and C, or you can have A and C or A and B. See? But you can't have all 3 running at once. It only allows you to have 2 of the 3 sets of speakers that you can connect to the unit active at any given time. So we just remove the bottom cover by removing the screws. The switches I need to get to, unfortunately, I have to actually do some more disassembly to get at them, because they're on the back side of the circuit board here. And the good news is I can actually get into the switch without taking this whole unit all apart. This is the switch in here. And it's actually an open frame design switch. So I can actually get into here with my contact cleaner and clean the contacts. which is good because the amount of time taken to take this entire front panel apart would be a couple of hours. And of course that adds up to a lot more money for the client. So let's get in here with the contact cleaner and spray the switch. You can see the switch moving, you can see the contacts inside, I'm sure, rotating. You see the switch is inside the contact. This is an open type switch. So it's not one that's closed off, so I'm able to access the contacts quite easily and get the cleaner to flow through the contacts. So now we'll power it up and see how it sounds. No more cutting and scratching. These little speakers that I'm playing now, it doesn't sound bad, and I don't have any bass or anything added here. It sounds good. So I still have a bit more work to do on this thing here. So the majority of the problem was just the input selector switch was dirty, but I've also got some, you can hear. My balance control is noisy. Volume control is good. Volume control on this one's a sealed unit. These units here are sealed, environmentally sealed, so they don't get any moisture in them, they don't get exposed to the air, they don't oxidize, and you know, the volume control is quiet. We have no issues with volume control, but what we do have an issue with is the balance control. Hear the balance? The balance control needs to be cleaned, and let's check out the other switches. That's the tape monitor switches. I'll plug my player into the tape inputs and check them as well. Just move the camera so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so here's the balance control that's noisy, you can hear it. And then we get some other switches to the high pass filter, low pass filter, treble control, and the bass control. Sounds like they could use a shot of cleaner as well. Whoops. Yeah, that's just picking up hum from something on my bench, the phono inputs. Some AC line is a little too close to the input, I guess. And I had the volume cranked up all the way too, which helps. I'll clean the tape monitor switches, and we'll just do an air check of the tuner. If we can find a radio station to tune in. Doesn't look like he's got anything stored on it. to leave that on too long because YouTube will have something to say about that, but the FM tuner is working. We can start our music playing again, I guess, here. Off the good old mini disc. This would be the mini disc that I repaired in the one of the last videos. There's the speakers I'm using for my monitors. So we're going to clean this other controls here and then see how it sounds. Another freaking case with this goddamn camera I thought was in record and it wasn't. Getting at the other controls was a much bigger pain in the butt than I had anticipated, and I just spent the last 20 minutes doing it, talking to you guys, and then I realized that the camera wasn't in record, but it required removing the circuit board, which I'm just in the process of putting back into place. There's a shield underneath here, underneath this board, that covers the controls, which I had to remove. So now I've got to reconnect all these grounds and connectors that I had to undo. And I apologize because I thought the camera was recording, but because of no red light on the front of this thing, and I couldn't see the screen, the little flip out screen, I assumed that it was in record when I pressed the record button, but I have no on-screen feedback on the large 32-inch monitor that I view what I'm doing on. So I wasn't actually in record. Apologize for that, but again, cleaning it was just a matter of removing this circuit board, lifting it out of the way, and of course that requires undoing all these plugs, which are all numbered, right? Then there's a number on the back of the circuit board. It says 42, there's a connector 42, this one says 43, there's a number 43 here. It's just a matter of unplugging all these connectors and lifting the circuit board out. And there's a couple screws that hold the shield in place. Lift the shield out, and then you can get at the controls and clean them all with contact cleaner. I just used good old Neutral to spray down the bass and treble controls, the balance control, and the switches. And yeah, I sprayed a little too much. A little bit of it is leaking out the front here. We'll just take care of that before the customer picks this up. But just plug this thing back in here. Oh, it is plugged in. I should have unplugged it, but power. And that's my noisy speaker. As you can hear, my controls no more. Oh, that one's still got a bit of noise. Well, we'll just, there we go. Nice and quiet now. Start our music up again. This speaker's in not very good shape, is it? It's okay at certain volumes, but at low volumes, one of my speakers is kind of, you can probably hear it. The other one's fine. I can switch the now I've switched left and right around, and it's still, now it's the same speaker. The other one is fine. That's my shop speakers. That's why the crappy speakers are in the shop. That's how they got blown up. Was I had an amplifier. I think I said a little earlier. I was working on an amplifier that had a bit of a DC offset problem, One of the, it was a driver transistor that was bad. And anyway, when it had run for a while, the transistor shorted and put full load across the speakers. Unfortunately, the protection circuitry in the amplifier that is supposed to de-energize the relay and protect the speakers, well, it didn't. Ended up with some smoked speakers. So my bench speakers are, as I say, they're beaters, and but we know that. I basically just need to hear, does the music work or not? In this case, everything's working. So one last look before I put the bottom on. As you can see, the components in this thing, I've got it unplugged now, so I can stick my fingers in here without getting electrocuted. But look at the size of the capacitors on here. It's just amazing. You know, this is what gives this unit. It's 150 watts per channel, and it'll do it. And my Sansui 9090 that I have in my personal collection, which it's due for an overhaul too. I haven't used the thing in ages, and I keep getting people that want to buy it from me, and I keep having to come up with excuses as to why I don't sell it, because the amount of money that I can make off of the unit, you know, I'd probably be crazy to turn down the money that I've been offered, but the unit itself is a 9090 on the used market, goes for about $7, maybe more now. The one I've got is in relatively good condition. I don't think it's in quite as good a condition as this. There's a few scratches in the wood cabinet, but that's nothing that couldn't be fixed up pretty easy. Polished them out. Operational wise, the last time I used mine was in good shape. I haven't used it in years, so who knows what's going to go boom the first time I plug it in. But again, it's just one of those pieces of equipment that I've owned for many years, and I used to use it back in my younger days when you wanted to have the biggest, baddest stereo. You didn't really care about the sound quality. It was just about how loud can you turn it, right? These amplifiers are powerhouse amplifiers, but they're not necessarily the most accurate sounding amplifier. I've since myself moved back to vacuum tubes for my Sirius music listening amplifier, and it's only putting out about 40 watts per channel. So it doesn't go particularly loud, but it's very musical, as all tube amps are. And that's why I like my tube amp. And it's not an old one either. It's one of the modern vintage tube amps. It's not a. I do have an old Macintosh, which I should also haul out of my storage locker and overhaul that for you guys. Not that I think there's anything wrong with it either. I don't believe there is, but it'd be a fun piece to work on nevertheless. But I do have an old Macintosh from the 1960s that probably should be featured here on the channel. One of many projects I've got planned for the next little while as we grow our YouTube audience. So here's this nice solid wooden cabinet, again a two-piece unit. It goes down over the front half of the unit. I guess they figured we'll put a little bit of wood on the front, the part that you'll see, and the rest of it that's sticking in the back of your cabinet. Who cares if it's a black metal cover? We'll make the last 6 inches of the unit that sticks out that you look at will make that one look nice. Anyway, there's the unit back together. Just gonna put the screws in it. We'll do a final test. And then I'll get it out here. Now we just tested the tape inputs on it. So that's the tape 2 input, and we'll go back to tape 1 input here. Where's tape 1? It's there. Back to FM radio. There's FM radio. So our tape inputs are working. That speaker sounds horrible. Okay, give you a look at the back of this thing, even though it's on its side, so you can see what the inputs and outputs are on this big beast. So we've got 2 phono inputs, auxiliary input, 2 tape recorder inputs, including a DIN circuit, a pre-out and main in. This is for hooking up an equalizer. Back in the days, everybody thought having an EQ unit was cool, so you could plug it in there. Has an FM detector out. That's for taking advantage of some of the subcarrier surfaces like SCA that were on FM radio stations, still are in many cases. And then over here we've got impedance selectors for the phono number 2. Where is it here? It's hard to see with the AM antenna in the way. There we go. We'll just get these wires out of the way. So you can run a moving coil cartridge load on phono 2. So you can run a moving coil or moving magnet cartridge. You got your AM FM antenna inputs here, and of course you got switched and unswitched outputs and the 3 speaker terminals. That's it. That's all she wrote. The unit's back together. Client will be very happy. They've got their amplifier back in operation. We'll see you on the next one. Bye. Okay, we can roll the credits now.